Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only, Maxi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Paper Mario, aka, for those of you who lived in Japan, Mario Story for the Nintendo 64. So, last time, we somehow made our way to the actual pier of the Falls of Toad's Town, and able to actually get in contact with the forms of that particular whale, and as a result, after dealing with the forms of the next mini-boss, which appears to be by the forms of Buzzapede, so as a result, we did manage able to taking care of it, and on top of that, we somehow managed able to catch a ride with the whale, and that pretty much leads us to our next destination, which appears to be Lava Island. So as a result, at the moment we did somehow manage able to explore into not only Jade Jungle for a bit, but as well as the forms of Yoshi Village, just to realize about the fact that as soon as we're able to actually come across it ourselves the near entrance to the actual volcano, obviously though we can't make it because we do need to, well, would at least require something. So because of that though, and all the while is about the fact that we also do realize that several of Yoshi's children are actually missing. So because of this though, we definitely need to find them before, well, everything else goes horribly wrong. So because of this though, and relatively speaking though, we also did manage able to recruit ourselves the 7th partner companion. That's what appears to be Yoshi, the cheap kind of partner. So because of that though, yeah, today for this video is that we are about to able to hit on to the forms of some next sections, and as a result, we can able to try to rescue as many of those Yoshi children as much as we can. So I believe there are a grand total of like 5 of them we need to find. I may be wrong. I mean, mind you though, it's about the fact that whenever I first got to this bit on for my very first playthrough of the game back in long time ago, this is the part I was stuck on for the longest time, mainly because I didn't pay attention to the surroundings as much, and not to mention though, for some stupid reason, I was in underleveled. So because of this though, that's why leveling up is important until you've realized about the fact that you do need to become a lot more stronger for the likes of the upcoming battles in the future. So because of this though, as you can tell, we somehow used one of our first techniques for Yoshi right here. That's what appears to be the belly flop. And much like the forms of how it does it for using your hammer, in addition to one of those techniques for the likes of Koopa, basically though we had to like hold the control stick at least on the left side for quite a while until it decides to able to hit the star icon. So that means you're able to actually guarantee to get a nice timing and what have you. So as you can tell, we've come across into yet another badge, which appears to be the Power Quake. So that would be pretty useful, especially it's almost like a an upgraded version of Quake Hammer ever since in Chapter 2. Although I don't suppose we probably not gonna use that often, because there's technically a much more advanced version of it until specifically for later, which does requires a lot of coins until we're able to actually buy that specific badge or what have you. So anyways now. So yeah, there are a few things I want to explain about this and that's what it appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 17th of April today, in some cases in 2025 today. So you know what that means, folks? Today's the day marks the forms of today's celebration for the sake of the forms of the Mario Kart World Nintendo Direct, which, like I said before, since in during the forms of it yesterday, I was originally trying to able to explain about that particular subject, but unfortunately though, that can wait during at some point until tomorrow, or perhaps even maybe if Pac-Man were able to mention more about it, if he goes back on playing through Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing for the Nintendo DS version, because, you know, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing is a racing game after all, so I suppose that makes a little bit more sense to able to actually get that specific context. So, and on top of all that stuff though, for I can tell that the actual Direct itself does seem to last for about 15 minutes, which is almost like kind of the equivalent to the forms of Super Mario Bros. Wonder Nintendo Direct back in during the forms of in 2023, perhaps. I mean, mind you though, it has been quite some time since I actually have last played Super Mario Bros. Wonder, ever since when, you know, Ray the Flying Squirrel already did that Let's Play since in the beginning in 2024. So, relatively speaking, everything else will be checked out as such. So, oh yeah, I surprisingly forgot to mention about the forms of those specific enemies that we did somehow tiled earlier on during the course of the forms of Chapter 5, relatively speaking. So as a result, we did somehow so far manage to tunnel quite a lot of enemies in during the forms of in Chapter 5 so far, and those enemies were Jungle Fuzzy, which obviously though they do have 7 HP, and the attack power was obviously 2, and defense power was 0, and meanwhile we've also got Spear Guys, which they also have 7 HP, and on top of that, 3 attack power, and finally 0 defense power. So, and finally, most notably, oh, there's actually more to it than that. I have to be quite frank for this point right there, because as you can tell, I have to once again rearrange the forms, the item situation right now, but luckily though, we've actually come across into ourselves the next super block. So as a result, that way we should be able to increase our, you know, super rank with Soshi and what have you. But eventually at some point later on in Chapter 5, there's going to be the most important item we definitely need to have for the sake of the forms of our later progression. So because of that though, and to be more specific than that, I suppose it will be coming handy in during the forms of much more tougher fights, especially because there's going to be some more optional fights that's going to be coming up soon. Well, I suppose, relatively speaking, that was about the fact I just want to get this out of the way. But obviously though, after we're done with the forms of Chapter 5, I don't think we can probably get into the next chapter just yet though, because relatively speaking, I'm also able to start focusing on some optional extra boss fights to get this over and done with, before we start to realize about the fact that, you know, trying to leveling up is important. So just in case you don't want to get too much wasting on your live streams, or heck, even especially noticeable if you dare get a game over at one point, then you have to go for a lot of text boxes again, and relatively speaking, you know, it just kicks you back to the title screen without any sort of coincidence. So, oh jeez, we totally forgot about that enemy right there. So, yeah, speaking of enemies though, there's also the forms of hurt plants, I think that's what they're called anyway, that we've fight from earlier. They do have 8 HP, and attack power is 2, and there's obviously 0 defense power. So, whilst meanwhile, we actually come across into ourselves the M Bush, which as a result, they do have 8 HP, and meanwhile, they somehow got 3 attack power, and finally 0 defense power. So because of that, it looks like the majority of the enemies, for the sake of Chapter 5, obviously they do have 0 defense power so far. So who knows, we might be able to come across into a later enemy coming up that at least it does manage to increase some defense. So because of that though, yeah, we'll get into more details about that at some point once we're able to continue our progression for Chapter 5. So, I mean, still, no matter what though, it's about the fact that at the very least we're now onto the halfway point in the game right now, so we have no idea how long is it going to take to get this process going, especially because, you know, that we have to go for a lot of stuff, ranging from optional bits, optional boss fights coming up, and relatively speaking, everything else will be come to expect when it comes to showing off any other parts when it comes to likely tackling something related to role-playing games for sure, because relatively speaking, it can take a very long time, or other times though, kind of quick depending on the forms of some scenarios. So, but yeah, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. What was your thoughts about the forms of this new Nintendo Direct by the forms of Mario Kart World Nintendo Direct? Did you enjoy it? Well, again though, I'll get to my final thoughts of it though during at some point until tomorrow, because relatively speaking, I was about the fact I was in the middle of something where it comes to likely for a lot of editing stuff, especially noticeable. I'm almost trying to catch up with the forms of, you know, more Paper Mario content, and in addition to eventually at some point for the weekends department, that hopefully though that Pac-Man will definitely try to able to conclude the rest of the stuff for the likes of, you know, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, despite the fact that he's almost basically done every single aspect in terms of Grand Prix before he decides to move along to the next mode, which appears to be Mission Mode, similar to the forms of how it does it when we did done the majority of the Grand Prix mode on the Xbox 360 version, and then as far as the Mission Mode is concerned, we most likely play it on the PlayStation 3, because obviously though, because, well, we don't want to come across into a lot of capture card technical difficulties with all that, you know, capturing footage and stuff like that, because we attempted to try to do it in the past, like ranging from Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic 06 on the Xbox 360 version in the past, and on top of that, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing for the Xbox 360. But most of the time though, it's a little bit annoying sometimes whenever I managed able to try to did those Let's Plays in the past. Well, to be more specifically, Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, alongside with the phones about the fact that, well, despite the fact that that particular Let's Play is no longer there anymore because, you know, it's now being replaced by the PlayStation 3 version because, well, you get the idea with all that. Not so much frustration with all that technical issues, and on top of all that stuff though, it's just about the fact I feel like that the amount of views we've got compared to the phones of how it does it back in 2017 is actually a massively improvement of the likes of from that year. So because of that though, you get the idea for that point. So also, as far as I'm aware, that Capking74, he's finally back on doing some more Super Mario RPG recently, which is good, concerning for the fact that at the moment right now, he's actually still on the phones of Mary Moore at the moment, so as a result, that after the events of that particular, a cake boss fight, which, yeah, you get the idea for this point, and obviously though he does manage to show everyone else the differences, depending on the actual, how fast you're able to actually get into that particular wedding, bit. So as a result, though, it's about the fact that he, did manage to show off all 4 of these results. So as a result, all in one particular split screen. So because of that, though, you can definitely tell the forms of some descriptions, depending on how well your performance goes. So anyway, so it looks like we've come across into our first Yoshi children we definitely need to rescue for. Although I was originally trying to able to actually save the cooking segment whenever we managed to save the apple for, but unfortunately though I somehow wasted by complete accident. But that's okay, because I'm not entirely sure about the fact that if I was trying to go for this particular route, when it comes to likely try to save up for some items for the sake of cooking. But either way, we shall wait and see. Alright, so it looks like we've come across into ourselves some even more piranhas, but they are specifically the specific named ones, which, for instance, though, we actually come across into ourselves Putwood Piranha, which obviously, though, they're trying to be more like poisonous type. So as a result, the actual status they do have 12 HP, which is quite a lot, and attack power is 3, and once again, 0 defense power. So because of that though, yeah, relatively speaking, we can able to actually take these guys down within like a couple of hits worth noting for, despite the fact that, well, I was expecting to try to able to equip defense plus, but I unfortunately though wasted all of those badge points, so yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but regardless of such though, Starstorm awaits. Because, like I said before, that Starstorm can easily manage to do insane amount of damage to some enemies. So, although I was originally trying to send out chill out technique for one of the star spirits, but I might save that for later for some occasions. So for now, let's just go ahead and try to finish this last enemy off, and hopefully we should be able to do just this. And there we go. So logically, we can able to rescue one of our first Yoshi children right there. So either way, so I'm sure enough that was about the fact that, like I said before, this is the only point I was stuck on in the past because I couldn't figure out what the heck am I doing. And as far as I'm aware though, because like I said before, for some stupid reason I was in under-leveled because I was trying to be like quite quick and what have you, or perhaps even back in the day, I was not really into RPGs as much back in the day, but nowadays I'm now into it, so, which I'm still really hoping for the fact that Final Fantasy VII Remake integrates will not, I repeat, will not have the stupid game key card system for Nintendo Switch 2, because if it does, that means unfortunately though, I might have to miss that out, so, because, relatively speaking, it was about the fact that I was still looking forward to see what's going to be, well, in terms of the evolves of Nintendo Switch 2 itself. Well, for instance, though, it was about the fact that we've already got, you know, Mario Kart World's Nintendo Direct. So I'm really expecting for the fact that the next Nintendo Direct might pop up during at some point for the likes of the forms of June month, similar to the forms of how it does it from last year, as well as 2023, but we shall wait and see what happens in due time, and let's just hope about the fact that they're trying to celebrate something related to the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, because, well, relatively speaking, it was about the fact that we still only got 5 months left until we're able to try to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Game franchise. So, yeah, you get the idea for that point. So, and also, as far as I'm aware, about the fact that we still about to be getting some more episodes for the sake of the Forms of the Simpsons season 36 on Disney Plus, apparently. So I suppose, relatively speaking, I was about the fact I did manage to able to like check out the Forms of some episodes so far, and it seems to be more specifically the actual intro sequences, you know, with the Forms of the couch gags. For some reason, the actual couch gags has been absent, so as a result, yeah, I really do miss the old days about the fact that they do have a lot of personality with all that couch gags or anything else like that, because they do have a lot of visual identities or something like that. Well, I suppose beggars can't be choosers, I guess, because at this point in time, like I said before, about the fact that exponentially, by the time until Season 40 is about to be around, this means about the fact that it will be the final stretch of The Simpsons related before anything else goes completely different, or perhaps even maybe they'll try to move on to the next series or something like that. I'm not entirely sure about that, though. I mean, time will tell, though. Time will definitely tell. Oh, and also, as far as I'm aware, that I did manage to able to double check in during the Forms of well, Nintendo Switch 2 gameplay footage on Nintendo GameCube games, that as far as I'm aware, one of those games in particular has completely removed one of those logos. Like, for instance, though, as soon as you boot up the Forms of, let's just say, for example, The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker for the Nintendo GameCube version, basically, though, in the original version, as soon as you're able to actually boot up the game, not only do you see the Forms of Nintendo logo, as to be expected, but also with the Forms of the secondary logo, which appears to be Dolby Surround Sound Pro Logic 2. Well, apparently though, it seems to be more specifically, that particular logo for Dolby Surround Sound Pro Logic 2, that particular logo has been removed on the Nintendo Switch 2 version of that specific emulation, which I only know for a fact that because it does have a lot of enhanced audio now for the likes of Nintendo Switch 2, so I suppose that I could imagine about the fact that if there are some more games coming out for the likes of, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 online subscription services expansion pack for the majority of the GameCube games. Like, for instance, though, I can imagine about the fact that they're trying to remove the Pro Logic 2 Dolby sound thing with the Forms of not only for Super Mario Sunshine, but alongside with the Forms of Mario Kart Double Dash, as well as the Forms of let's just say Mario Party 5, Mario Party 6, Mario Party 7, and on top of all that stuff, though, with other Nintendo games as well, like let's just say Wario World and Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, Mario Power Tennis, Mario Smash Football, or Super Mario Strikers if you're an Americans. And on top of that, there's also with the Forms of Mario Superstar Baseball. But either way, I suppose time will definitely tell, especially because despite the fact that the actual app for Nintendo Switch 2 for the Nintendo GameCube games, it still hasn't been out yet until specifically on the 5th of June. So no matter what, though, we can able to expect the hype of the Forms of certain games will be added to that particular service. So, oh, and it's also worth noting for too, I unfortunately decided able to actually go back on playing through Mario Kart Tour again, which, yeah, it's nothing too special really, especially no matter what though, we haven't got that long left until, you know, Mario Kart World is about to be fastly approaching, so generally speaking, I was about the fact I'm still basically incredibly hyped about the Forms of Mario Kart World after all. I mean, sure enough though, it's about the fact that we can able to expect to know of what some more information they'll bring up, so... But like I said before, it's about the fact I will mention more about the Forms of some new stuff that'll be added for that particular most recent Nintendo Direct for the likes of Mario Kart World at some point until tomorrow for the sake of the Forms of that particular discussion, so... But yeah, that's as far as we can able to talk about the actual subject at this point, guys. I mean, sure, about the fact that, like I said before, is about the fact that luckily I've already pre-ordered Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza recently for Nintendo Switch 2, so that'll be the good start for able to get something Nintendo Switch 2 related. Well, because then again though, still no luck of trying to get the system, but I'm actually going to be going into buying those specific Nintendo Switch 2 items from different stages. So, the first stage I've already done is of course getting 2 Nintendo Switch games in particular, both of which are brand new at the time. And meanwhile for stage 2, I'm actually going to be going after not only the Nintendo Switch 2 camera, but alongside with the forms of the only one Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller, and hopefully I will try to snag it as quick as I can before I'm able to actually start to be comparing, Nintendo Switch 2 controller compared to the forms of the regular Nintendo Switch Pro controller. And for stage 3, it will obviously be the system itself, the Nintendo Switch 2. And for stage 4, it will be pretty tricky for me actually, because I was assuming for the fact I was trying to go after the carrying case alongside with the forms of yet another Nintendo Switch 2 game, although it's more specifically the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of one of those specific games to able to have some capabilities for Nintendo Switch 2 features, such as I might try to go after yet another version of Super Mario Party Jamboree, not only because of the forms of how the fact that, that luckily though there's no download code if you're trying to get the game physically. So as a result though, it's about the fact that I was assuming for the fact I just love to have a look at the forms of some game covers just to compare. And as a result, no matter what though, despite there's going to be some information that's been blocking off a beautiful, box art details and all that stuff though, so yeah, I can usually try to actually guarantee for the fact I have to get used to it, I guess, I'm afraid. So, along with the fonts that's very out of place, QR code at one point, enjoying the likes of the fonts of one of those box arts for Nintendo Switch 2 editions for some Switch 1 games, with the fonts of some new content and additional enhancements, But, yeah. And I suppose there's also another thing else I would like to explain about this as well, since no matter what though, about the fact that it's already been, let's just say for about 13 days ago, since when a Minecraft movie came out on a big screen on the cinemas, well, there's no shock and surprise about the fact that there's going to be a sequel is going to be confirmed. So as a result, but again, we're probably not going to get into any further details up to this point, because I still have not seen a film yet. And as far as I'm aware, though, it's about the fact that I'm probably not going to get involved with all that chaotic mess with all that particular, cinemas, as well as the forms of theaters at the same time, just because, no matter what, though, I just don't want to get involved with all that messy, chaotic moments with all that popcorns, and a lot of shouting, and on top of all that stuff, though, a lot of, well, you get the idea for this point. So, anyway. And speaking of which though, is about the fact that there's also another thing else I would like to explain to you all, is that I might actually decide to take a break on buying some DVDs and Blu-rays at the same time, until, to be more specifically, until 2026, for the likes of the next Mario movie, which we still have no idea what the movie is going to be all about, until we hear more about it during at some point for the likes of the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, so... But then again, we'll have to wait and see. So anyway, and I suppose there's also another thing else I would like to explain about this as well, is that I think, fundamentally speaking, I was about the fact I'm also able to expect that alongside with the advanced carrying case for the Nintendo Switch 2 I was hoping to get for stage 4 of buying some specific Nintendo Switch 2 things, but I'm also able to go after the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, plus with the forms of Star-Crossed World, so just in case I can able to replay the game again, but this time around though with an additional new thing. So because of that though, yeah, some stuff like that I can able to try to afford, but unlike the forms of how it does it on some Nintendo Switch 2 edition games, it's hard for me to grasp with all that particular final thoughts of trying to get those specific editions physically, just because no matter what though, I've already got The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild already, and on top of that with Tears of the Kingdom as well, and I have no issues of playing these games after all on the original Switch 1, because obviously though, those games are super playable with all that particular no issues whatsoever, apart from frame rate issues, but that's all those to really commented on for the sake of the forms of the only con that I can probably think about. So anyway, alright, so it looks like we're trying to bring out our ward out so we can able to see the darkness cave into it. And suffice to say, we found yet another Yoshi around in this particular cave. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be any secret around here. I mean, let me check on the bomb edge right here, and sure enough, it's nothing. So, oh well, no big deal. Beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. So, oh yeah, I should also mention about this as well, I guess, is about the fact that apparently, though, that it may look like for the fact that there's also going to be yet another 30th anniversary of one of those films in particular coming up soon, and that's what appears to be Pocahontas, which, yeah, I found that film to be, kind of meh to me. I mean, it's definitely still is the weakest in terms of the films of the Disney Renaissance movies to me, though, just because I found that film nothing particularly that remarkable to me. I mean, unlike something related to the films of some superior choices like, you know, The Little Mermaid 1989 version, alongside with the films of, you know, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and of course The Lion King, obvious choice, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan especially, because those films are pure masterpieces in the Disney Renaissance era when it comes to the 90s, because I will say though, the 90s era is by far the best era to me though, when it comes to pretty much everything, which is especially noticeable that we've also got, back in the day that is, during the films of in the early 90s, we got, you know, Tiny Toon Adventures that despite the fact they only lasted for about 5 years for the likes of, you know, not only from 1990, but all the way up to 1995, according to the films of specific articles about it, which I already know for a fact that with Tiny Toon Adventures, they somehow managed able to, like, well, you get the idea for that point, which, again, we'll talk more about the films of that specific celebration for, you know, 35 years since Tiny Toon Adventures did somehow first brought up. All the films have been a television program during at some point in around the exact same month as in the 40th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, which I already know I keep on about it, but anyway. So as you can tell, if you hear that jingle right there, this means that every single Yoshi kids are basically now saved. So because of that though, I suppose we can now able to actually head back into the Yoshi village. But before we do that though, we need to take care of the those jungle fuzzies from now on. So just in case we can able to, like, guaranteed to able to get rid of them. Although despite the fact that we are still getting lesser amounts of those star points, because the more we're trying to go for like overpowered level, then obviously that we can able to guarantee to get lesser amounts of those star points until specifically towards the end game, as well as the Fonster's special rare enemy that we can able to come across into, but it's actually kind of luck based, which I'll explain more about that if we get into the next chapter at some point during the likes of it next week or two. Well, depending on the forms of how lengthy certain chapters are. Well, I will still say though, is that chapter 2 is still very lengthy, just because of all that, a lot of backtracking with all that dry desert, and in addition to the forms of certain elements to it though. But it looks like so far we're actually getting some pretty good progress with all that quick timing recording session with all that specific chapters worth noting for. I mean, still there are some rare occasions about the fact that in chapter 4 that we have to exit out the phones that, you know, Shy Guy's toy box, and then as a result we have to get one of the most important mandatory items in order to able to progress, which is of course Toy Train. So yeah, you get the idea for that point. So, and by the way, with that coin over there for that particular flower, as you might have expected, if you dare try to grab that coin, obviously though, I believe you will lose one of your HP. So because of that though, you have to be very cautious about that. So, but that's not to say for the fact that, well, also as far as I'm aware, that the actual spell spirit is not going to go anywhere for the time being, which I suppose no matter what though, that the reason why that particular notification did somehow showed up with the actual spell thing did somehow run out during the course of being sometime in the likes of, I don't know, chapter 3 or something like that, although I may be wrong. But as a result though, because it's been quite a few hours since I actually have last played this game for sure, and on top of that, it's also been about quite a while since I actually have managed able to double check in my channel itself. But either way, so as you can tell, every single Yoshi's is now calmed down now, so this means everything else goes all like happy and all that stuff. So anyway, now before we talk to the phones of one of the leaders of the Yoshi's group, all the Yoshi tribes, to be more specifically, I need to buy not only the Super Shroom, alongside with the Fonts of Fire Flower, and unfortunately though, I'm out of room for my item storage for able to try to buy the Thunder Rage. So, oh well, no big deal, because obviously that was about the fact that we already done with the Fonts of Sun battles, no problem, except the fact I just realized that we somehow used one of our Ultra Shrooms by mistake. So because of that though, oh well, no big deal. At least there might be one eventually at some point, until specifically the later chapters to come, because as be expected though is about the fact that the more we try to progress onto certain chapters, obviously though we might able to actually get even more valuable items, such as for example, in Yoshi Village right there, we can now able to try to buy the Super Shroom in the actual item shop, as opposed to regular mushroom, unlike the forms of how it does it in, well let's just say in Toad Town and, Koopa Village, and as well as the forms of some occasional aspects in Dry Outpost or something like that. That way we can able to try to buy some of these items. They do have less purposes for the likes of likely trying to get ourselves, you know, restored lesser amount of HP or something like that, compared to the forms of some superior ones for sure. I mean, relatively speaking, you know, you get the idea for this point, so... But, yeah, like I said, there's nothing else I can really talk about that, but I'll promise you guys that during at some point until tomorrow, they will definitely try to mention more about the forms of, you know, some more information has been brought up for the likes of Mario Kart World, and let me tell you, I'm still basically excited for that game still, although it's a shame about the fact that I still haven't exactly pre-ordered the Nintendo Switch 2 just yet, in some cases my final game console for the time being, or should I say for reals this time, because no matter what though, something tells me for the fact that with the later game consoles for the future, specifically not only the new brand new Xbox console, but as well as the phones of PlayStation 6, my goodness, it's gonna get so expensive. And don't even get me started in doing the phones of the most recent event of terms, about the fact that unfortunately though, for those of you who lived in the UK, I'm afraid to tell you that the PlayStation 5 system cost is actually rising up again. So no matter what though, I'm essentially giving up on getting PlayStation 5 now, especially because, my god, why does it keep doing that with all that economy is about to get messed up? It's actually now onto whopping £425 with all that, well, let's just say the standard version with the disk drive already installed, and maybe it's even worse with the phones of PS5 Pro for sure. I mean, it's just that, oh my god, economy is about to get messed up in the future, doesn't it? Especially with all that, the infamous is about to happen with all that, life is too complicated with all that price economies and stuff like that, which I know is a bit of a pain, as well as it's a little bit of a nuisance. So, for me personally though, Nintendo Switch 2, it will be my absolute definition of my final game console to get, especially because at this point in time, that my video game cabinet shelf is almost going to be running out of space, so as a result, that'll be a perfect opportunity to choose Nintendo Switch 2 over the likes of PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X to me. But I'm still really baffled about the fact that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero still hasn't been made it to Nintendo Switch 2. Maybe they will do in the future, but not now for the time being, just because they need to work on, well, you get the idea for this point. So, and yeah, I suppose that's all I can really talk about the forms of today's discussion. I mean, sure, there might be some little, things I could probably try to explain. Like, I'm really expecting for the fact I can probably go back into, Sonic Dash at some point, just to try to unlock some more, new characters, such as the forms of Marina Raccoon from the likes of Sonic Rush Adventure, as well as the forms of Extreme Gear Shadow, and you probably get the idea for that specific solutions worth noting for. So because of that, and it may look like for the fact that I'm actually going to be trying to unlocking Sinbad the Sailor at some point later today. So because of that though, that'll be a perfect opportunity for me to go back into Sonic Dash at that point. So yeah, and I'm really looking forward to trying to, trying to get a complete full set of those specific playable characters in Sonic Dash, apart from two exceptions, which is you probably expect. Hello Kitty and Miss Pac-Man. I mean, what you expect, because those are limited time. So anyway, I'm afraid to tell you for this point, guys, is that we got endings of this point right here. So join me next time for more Let's Play of Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64, is that we are about to make our way to the forms of some next sections in the jungle and able to meet up with the forms of the Legend of the Ravens. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later, fellas.